Hi, Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com. Hey, I thought I would share something with you today. It's a really simple, basic exercise. You probably do this exercise. It's very common. It's done at dance classes, yoga classes, Tai Chi classes, martial arts classes. And I have to say that I almost always see this exercise done wrong. And you won't hear me say the word wrong very often. I'm a relativist. I always ask when someone says this is good, I always say good for what? Good for whom? When? So this would be, the way I see people doing it is good for getting injured. It won't kill you, it won't injure you immediately, but over time it will injure you the way most people do this exercise. And doing it correctly is not hard. It's actually pretty simple, but it requires a little brain work, a little neuromuscular detangling, kind of like doing these little finger things, where you separate your fingers. It requires a gentle attention rather than too much force. So let me show you what the exercise looks like, and then I'll show you what I think is right about it and what I think is wrong about the way that other people do it. So I'm going to start with my feet wide. I'm going to sit parallel, like my feet are parallel, and I'm sitting down into my thighs, shifting my weight back and forth, swinging from my waist, and letting my hands slap against my body like this. Now, when I teach this, I tell people to sit like this. Sitting is important. This is not flat. This is down into the crease here, the hip crease. And I tell people to shift back and forth. And when you get to one side or the other, just push a little bit further so that your femur really lines up with your foot. So you're not here, but not here either. So it's just there so that it's relatively easy to pick up the other foot. If I'm just an inch shy of that, I can't do it, I'll fall. So it's a push back and forth with a little slide in the hips. And then just kind of pick up speed and I tell people to get a sense of this. It's not this, and it's also not this. It's just back and forth. The legs are pistons. The feet are roots. The legs are pistons. They are just pushing the weight back and forth. That's it. No rotation in the knees. It's just back and forth. One knee goes over the toe. The other knee goes over the toe. The camera angle might not show that, but my knee is pointing down the middle of my foot, not towards my big foot, or big toe, not towards my little toe, right? Back and forth. Then I'll usually tell them to stop in the middle, like they were in cement up to their hips, and just turn your waist like this. Now this is the waist independently generating the momentum to do this. This is not what I ultimately want to do, but people usually have a pretty good idea about how to do this. And so I'll let them do this. Use your waist to turn your arms, right? Then just start shifting your weight in the direction of the hand that's in front of you. So if it's this hand, you're going to go in that direction. So I just go back to that shift, and then you're doing this on top of that. Underneath it is just this. It's not this. It's not turning in the hips. That's what I see people do wrong. Or right for getting injured. So back and forth, right? Add the turn. There. Nice upright spine. Don't slouch. Keep your chest up a little bit. Keep your chin down a little bit. Nice long spine. Now it's easy when you're doing this to start forgetting about the weight shift and ending up doing it just barely shifting at all. And then you can start turning your hips. Usually people start turning their hips because they haven't separated the hip from the waist. As my good Tai Chi buddy Daryl Bloom says, when you think of turning your waist, think of turning your ribs. And I really like that. So think of the ribs turning. This is the waist, see? This is the hips. Two different things. So you're shifting back and forth, and then you're letting that momentum transfer from the legs to the waist, and then the waist just swings the hands. The hands are just delivery boys of this momentum. They're not powering it like this, and they're also not directing it. The waist is doing the directing. See this here? But it's the waist, not the hips. Now, what most people do, I find that I think is wrong or is good for getting injured, is they tend to root this movement in the pelvis and power it with the waist. So the root needs to be near the power. So the power is in the waist and the root is in the hips. And what happens? The hips are just sitting on two ball socket joints of your femurs. It's not that stable a root at all. It's very slippery. And so when you power it here, what inevitably happens is the hips turn. And so you see people doing this all the time. Look at the knees. See that twist? I'm not going to do it long. It's not good. Right? So you see that. Or they even see people lifting their feet off the ground like that. Right? If you plant your feet on the ground, and it's a great exercise for separating the parts of the kinetic chain. There's three big links: legs, core, shoulder girdle, and arms. Those are the big, links in the power chain. So the legs are just doing this. And you get used to that first. And that little hip slide at the end, just a slight, I think it's called an eversion of the joint. Just a slight one. So your weight's really centered over there. And get that going, right? And then on top of that, you're adding the core waist movement. That's this movement here. And you're doing just a little teeny bit of arm, a little bit of fling, just a little tiny light fling in the arms, sort of like taking a pencil from a compass a little further from the center. So you just let it go out a little bit, so the waist is what's turning the arms. But the momentum is coming from your legs. Turns are added value. You don't start the thing here. You start it here. Then this is added value. So the waist adds momentum and it adds direction to raw momentum from the legs. And the arms just express that. So watch again. I'm shifting back and forth. Right? Then I'm adding the turn. And then I start flinging the arms a little bit more. And I'm watching my hips in this camera monitor here, and I'm seeing that they're just going back and forth. I don't want to see this. Don't want to see that. Look at my knees twist. No knee twisting. Knees are not rotating joints, really. They rotate a tiny bit, and we need that rotation, but it's small. The main rotation comes from the hips. So the more you turn when you're going that way, the more this knee wants to collapse inward. So keep that knee out a little bit. This elbow goes back, this knee goes out. This elbow goes back, this knee goes out a little bit, right? So if you let your head turn now with the swing, there's going to be more of a temptation to turn your turn your hips. Because when I do that, there's more temptation to do this. So you have to be extra firm here and loose here. You have to let your waist go, but leave your hips facing forward. So there is a little crease inside here that you can do that will allow you to turn a little tiny bit. You can get a little bit of hip turn in there without twisting your knees. For sure, you can go into these side creases here. But honestly, I find that until someone really gets this other stuff down, that just complicates things. If you try not to move your hips at all, that's a great way to start this, so that just your waist is moving, and then inevitably this will happen anyway. This little crease will happen and you'll get a little extra rotation from that. But if you're trying to get that, then the hips turn. So I just let that go until someone's really got it. If they've really got it, then I can explain it. But I very rarely have to. Usually it just happens on its own, this little extra crease. So think about, like if you had a flashlight on your belt buckle, that flashlight's just shining back and forth pretty level on a line there. If you had a flashlight on your chest, that would be shining across the room, maybe even 180 if you really got it going on. But the idea isn't to see how far you can turn, it's how far you can turn without twisting your knees, right? The easiest thing to happen is the weight shift goes away and you're just swinging your arms like this, and then the knees will start twisting. So make sure that weight shift doesn't go away when you add the hands, right? So if you're doing the hands at the same time as the weight shift, like this is what I would call coordinated local strength. If I stop, this local strength continues, right? That's better than nothing. It's certainly better than watching TV. But shifting back and forth, if I do it this way, my arms are moving because my weight's moving and because my waist is moving. So if I stop my weight shift, my arms are inclined to stop too, because they're being flung by my leg momentum, amplified and directed by my waist turning, the rotation part. So this comes in handy all over the place. This is wind up and releasing of punches, all kinds of martial stuff involve this same principle, but this is the easy tempo version. You know, you can get those feet lined up, you can work on just the weight shift and feel that sliding over, and then you can add the turn and add the fling, and there they go. Great exercise to do before you go to sleep, when you wake up, when you've been sitting in a car or a desk or a computer or a chair for too long, or almost any amount is too long, but when you've been sitting for half an hour, get up for 1 minute and do this. Now I've been doing this for years, so I can just go from sitting, I can just jump up and just go right into this and not be twisting my knees. If you're fairly new to it, I would recommend really sitting into your legs and shifting back and forth just like that, and just work on that shift and make sure that's there. Then turn your waist on top of that, like there. And it doesn't have to be fast. The main thing is that you don't want that, right? So it's a great little exercise in itself. It's a microcosm of Tai Chi, rooted in the feet, powered by the legs, directed by the waist, expressed by the upper limbs. So hopefully that's helpful. It's one of my pet peeves, and it's one of the things that I'm happy to share with anybody anytime, is how to do this without hurting the knees. So if you like this kind of thing, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I make these videos to be helpful, so if it is helpful, please let me know in the comments section. I do have a little digital tip jar in the video description, but that's an option, no big deal if you don't. I don't do this channel to make money, but it is always nice to help pay the bills and whatnot. So thanks for watching, I appreciate it, and best of luck to you in your practice.